All right, we got Larry Seyer. Sounds like rhymes like sounds like fire. This is Gavin Mehl. We're going to go ahead and talk today a little further about who's Larry and in overall and what who he is and ultimately how he found Bitcoin. And he says he loves to study Bitcoin. Kind of a little bit of a background here. Larry is a 9-time Grammy award-winning music producer, engineer, and music engineer and musician. And he's worked with artists such as Huey Lewis, George Strait, Dixie Chicks, Lyle Lovett, Dolly Parton. I saw you had Tim McGraw on there, Willie Nelson. I wanted to ask you about Matthew McConaughey and Dazed and Confused. Saw you were part of that. You did a lot of created a lot of different musical libraries with Stevie Wonder and George Duke, as well as very knowledgeable in computer programming, and loves Bitcoin and studies Bitcoin in all versions, and hosts a weekly music stream on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time. So, Larry, pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Pleasure to meet you too. Of course, you may not know this, but I found you on Twitter when you started talking about you were discussing BSV, and I had just recently uh, gone down the rabbit hole with the BSV uh, copyright lawsuit that has been ensuing with Dr. Craig Wright, and I thought that was interesting. And I thought, well, I need to contact this guy. And then right afterwards, you posted a link, said, if you want to have a discussion, send me a message. So I decided to go ahead and do that. And that's how we got here today.
Hey, well, it sounds like we could start there. Some of the issues that you brought up to my attention to discuss were, one, the copyright issue. You
Yeah.
brought up a case, Penguin Books versus Endeavor Academy out of New York. Two is
Right.
the patent versus copyright. Three, financial incentive to keep BTC as the dominant chain. Four, BTC an asset and BSV a security with a question mark, and then BTC versus BSV and some questions and comments that you had. So where would you like to start?
Well, since the copyright issue is what actually brought us together, why don't we start there?
Yeah.
Because that's the one that's most interesting to me.
Uh,
When I heard that, well, first of all, there's the identity issue, and I have no idea if Dr. Wright is Satoshi or not. I don't know. And I should also point out before we get started here that all these opinions that I'm sharing with you today are my own. They have nothing to do with any of my clients, anything to do with my past work or future work with anybody else. These are my personal opinions and the research that I have done for myself. And it's not to be construed as financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. So now that we got that down, we can talk about what our opinions are and share them. The copyright issue with the white paper sparked my interest because I know a little bit about copyright since I'm in the business, the music business, and I'm also a student of a spiritual work called A Course in Miracles. And because I've been a student for as long as I have, I was familiar with the copyright issue they ran into with this Penguin Books versus Endeavor Academy. And to summarize it, I've got it here. I'm going to throw it up on the screen.
yeah. Can I jump in and just do a summary from my interpretation of it?
Sure.
Ultimately, it looks like the court found this back in 1975, the plaintiff bore the burden of proof to that a distribution of a course called Course in Miracles prior to 1975 had copyright registration was a limited publication. And so the court found that the plaintiffs did not meet their burden. And specifically, one, the group that received the unpublished manuscript was not select. The decision about who received copies was subject rather than based on the objective criteria. So the distribution was not a limited purpose. The recipient's common interest in spiritual and psychologically did not constitute a limited purpose. This is one of the elements that was required to meet. And then the distribution did not preclude recipients from reproducing and distributing the copies that were sent out before 1975. So therefore, basically all the pre-1975 work of Course of Miracles constituted a general publication, meaning that it was just published out there and anybody was allowed to use it in the public domain. And then in 1975, copyright registration was invalid because the work had already entered into the public domain. And so a judgment entered in favor for the defendants in this case. So they failed to basically, in summary, they just failed to meet their burden. And I mean, I kind of went through some of the elements here on the copyright, to meet a copyright claim, but let me just defer back to you there before we do that, Larry. Your comments on your thoughts on this case, since you probably have much more involvement or knowledge about it.
I don't claim to have an additional knowledge that you
Nope.
don't already have, but I do know that since you and I have talked, I've done a little bit more research and I've got some more information. And as you know, that this relates to the white paper, because the white paper has already, as always, as far as I know, been copyrighted by Satoshi Nakamoto, but his identity was not known. It was actually filed by the Copyright Office. Wasn't it filed by Dr. Wright and Satoshi? I believe, I'm not sure. Somebody can write in the comments whether or not I'm right about that or not. If they prevail on the copyright issue, who knows what will happen to BTC, whether or not they have to pay royalties for the use of the white paper. And the other thing that I'm not sure of, and maybe you can help me with that, is does the copyright extend to the blockchain itself? Is the concept of blockchain copyrighted? If it is, we are in a world of ridiculousness here. It, who know? I mean, that would affect every coin known to me. Do you have any opinions about that?
Well, it sounds like we now would be a good time to kind of give a little background on the cases here from a non-lawyer's perspective. Okay, so
Okay,
basically a number of legal actions filed up in the high court. This is out in the UK. There's the COPA versus Wright case. It concerns the identity issue. That identity is whether or not Dr. Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. And
right.
so then the keys basically in that case are, they combined all these other issues into that one central focal point on whether or not he is Satoshi or isn't Satoshi. And so it's, then after that, there's a second case, which is Wright versus BTC Core. And in that case, the first case has to be successful for Wright, and then it would roll over to the copyright case and database rights for Bitcoin. So that's the two kind of the separate elements. You got the copyright on the white paper, and then the database rights for Bitcoin itself. So,
Oh, the database is mentioned in the copyright.
yeah. So in comparing this particular subject about this case, in referencing it in my limited review of this other case that you mentioned about the what is it, the Church of the Course in Miracles.
Right.
So it is a very, it's a really, actually, it seems to be a very good relevant case to point out. It seems to make a lot of sense. Now, the questions that are going to be required to be proven by Wright as relevant to this would whether or not, it was a limited or general publication on the white paper. That's going to be his burden. Sounds
You're
like
exactly
according to
right.
this.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So was it limited or was it general? That's going to be for the court to decide. What do you think, Larry?
Well, I don't know, but I found some relevant information that I want to share with you. I have not shared with you before. I'm going to go ahead
Yeah.
and bring it to the screen here. Um, and that is a Foundation for Inner Peace PDF I found about this case. And in answer to your question, it was absent. I'm just going to read a little bit for you. Absent the publication without a copyright notice, use of the book by a religious group in its worship might well have been found infringing. In other words, if the white paper, way I read this, is if the white paper was ever released without a copyright notice, that would, that may, let's just say may, because I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, would that invalidate the copyright? Do you know if the white paper was ever released without a copyright notice?
Uh, that those facts would have to defer to the trial for whether or not it
Yeah,
was or
I don't
wasn't.
know either. I don't know. Um, okay, after the bench trial from May 19th to May 21st in 2020 and 2003, the copyright of the course was held invalid due to prior publication without notice of copyright. That seems to be an issue. So even though a work is copyrighted, if it was ever released without that copyright notice, then that may render uh, the enforcing of that copyright to be invalid. I'm just asking that. I'm not saying that's true because I'm obviously not a lawyer. I'm asking about that. So I don't know. Um, we're just talking about the different things. Um, if worst case scenario, if to me, if Dr. Wright prevails, he proves he's Satoshi, and I have no idea if he is or not. I don't know. Uh, and if he wins the copyright issue, then, as I understand it, they would have to wait until the copyright expires to use the technology again. And the quote that I'm referencing here is with the first release of A Wonderful Life by Frank Capra, starring Jimmy Stewart. When debuted in 1946, it was not a huge hit with either audiences or critics, and afterwards slipped quickly into obscurity. What transformed it into the Christmas classic it has become was the expiration of the copyright in 1973. Because of this, television stations could show it for free, and they started playing it constantly between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, because the copyright expired, the movie became popular. So now we're setting up, if he wins the copyright case, it's not forever, but it sure would put a damper in what's going on right now. Don't you think?
Seems like that's the case, Larry. It would make a huge difference on what's going on because an injunction could issue by the court, which would then affect all the nodes and the miners. You know, the nodes specifically, I think there's 16 or so nodes. So it's not BTC is not a everybody's, using a Raspberry Pi and having any say in the
Right.
network. It's only like a small amount of nodes.
Right.
And those nodes are usually large corporations that are going to be more inclined to follow a court order, unless they want to end up in court themselves.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
we definitely want all this to follow the legal framework, and I'm not advocating anything other than that.
yeah.
But uh, it is interesting about this copyright issue, and I just have to ask myself. I don't know if you thought about this um, with the Gary Gensler, the SEC, and the ETF that is supposed to expire today. I don't know. We'll see. Today is January 10th, 2024. They're supposed to have some kind of ruling on that or release. There was a false ruling yesterday. Everybody knows that supposedly they got hacked. We'll see if that seems like weirdness to me. But if I was Gary Gensler, and of course I'm not, but if I was him, there is no way I would make a ruling on this if I knew about this court case. Would you?
Well, I think he's doing his best to pretend this court case isn't happening. Just like most all of the other big players, they're even though they're suing this guy, they're doing a pretty good job to pretend that it's not happening.
Well, then that reminds me of the Napster issue. Like Napster was huge until copyright law basically killed them. Um, it took them down. Copyright law goes across international borders. It's very powerful. So I think for me, COPA would be ignoring the monster in the room if they think they're just going to be able to walk over this. If he can prove ownership, that he is Satoshi and he owns the copyright, things are going to just flip, in my opinion.
It's going to come down to the identity issue. Can he prove whether or not he's Satoshi? It's really it all hinges on that, because if he proves that and the court issues that he is, then it's going to roll over and it's going to be more likely than not to win the second case. It
You
really
think
is
he
going to,
will win the second case?
if he wins the first case on the issuance rights, because, that will be like, okay, yep, more likely than not, he is Satoshi. He's got enough evidence here. He has to prove that he was the issuer of that. And there's, what people are missing is the Kleiman v. Wright, the Kleiman v. Wright case ruling, and the authority and the Ninth Circuit opinion, or I'm sorry, the 11th Circuit opinion on that case. If I was his lawyer,
Enlighten me. Yeah.
if I was Wright's lawyer, I would be starting out with, I would be directing the court to the ruling in the 11th Circuit down there. Well, what happened was this. So in 2018, Wright got sued by Kleiman. Kleiman was according to the court, Kleiman was his best friend at the time, like around 2009, 2008. And he had hired Kleiman to help him edit the white paper, according to Wright. And ultimately, Kleiman was paid X amount of thousands of dollars and X amount of Bitcoin, BTC, to do this task. And the court determined that that's what Kleiman did. He was hired to do that. His estate made the filing and claim, and it was one of the biggest cases of all time, some $60 billion suit that they wanted, or more than that. And so, ultimately the court found that no, Wright, Dr. Wright was the only one that, that issued this offering, and Mr. Kleiman had nothing. He was a contractor, like many others that were also contractors, but the one who actually issued the offering was Wright. I mean, this matter is settled already, according to the client. Right. That case went on for 5 years, and now it's been held in the Court of Appeal. It's a federal district court case down there in Florida. So they already appealed it, and the appeal court affirmed the ruling. Now, the facts aren't the same. They didn't determine the identity issue of Satoshi Nakamoto. That wasn't determined. So that's why this case is going on. However, the court already determined that no one else helped Wright issue Bitcoin. At least it wasn't Kleiman, and nobody else came forward. So
and they actually mentioned the name Wright, or did they say Satoshi?
No, Wright. Wright was the one. He was the defendant in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So that case is already occurred as a matter of law. Now they're bringing up. There was one hang up in the case that came up, which they're really trying to bring up in this COPA case, and that was Wright was sanctioned by the district court for failing to produce documents. He was sanctioned, and Wright, basically did an objection to the magistrate's ruling. It was by the magistrate, and the magistrate said that he brought up all these other issues that were supposed to be coming up later at trial. And he said, oh, Wright, did these things. And he made some determinations that were then appealed, and the appellate court bounced it back, saying the magistrate should not have determined things like fraud, basically he determined fraud on the magistrate level, but that was overturned, okay, by the appellate court. And the appellate court said, well, I'm sorry, it was the district court judge. The district court judge overturned it, saying that, that shouldn't have been determined. The magistrate had no right to even evaluate those facts at the time. This was only about sanctions. And the sanctions was because Wright was supposed to turn over some of the file formats of the original, like the blocks. I mean, it was, trying to think, it's this, the actual facts of what he was turning over. It was discovery. He was turning over discovery, and he didn't do it. Ultimately, what happened was he said there was a bonded courier that was coming. The court record reflects that the bonded courier showed up and that everybody got satisfied. What was in the bonded courier? I don't know exactly. That was sealed. But the record reflected that he met the requirements of the court, and he did produce that bonded courier. Who was the bonded courier? These are COPA. These are big allegations. The COPA saying, "Oh, the bonded courier was." They're making conclusions that we don't necessarily have all the facts on. Who was the bonded courier? Was it? We don't know. What was in the bond?
No.
We don't actually know. Some of the sealed records. So, but accordingly, he met that ruling, and if I was his attorney, I would be bringing that up right away. I'd be like, look, this has already been settled here in the Florida case. This copyright issue is about the identity issue, but we're building all this foundation. I mean, this is a 5-year jury trial.
Right.
So it
Right.
wasn't just a bench trial where, for example, on the case that we've got here, now it's still controlling law. The one that you brought up here about the 1975 case, those are dual motions for summary judgment. Not a jury trial. Not to the same that it doesn't have authority. It does. It's on the district court level. It's not on the court of appeal level. So it definitely doesn't have that authority. But also, it wasn't tried, meaning that the summary judgment's just on the pleadings. The court
Mhm.
looks at papers and makes a determination. When we got a jury trial, that's like very setting precedent. In this case. So I think it's going to be significant. We'll see. But did you want to go on and out? You mentioned the copyright versus patent versus copyright.
Oh,
Is
that
it
was an article I found out. I think it's important that we explain the difference between copyright and patent. Um, you copyright a work and you patent a process. So a lot of people have talked about patenting Bitcoin or patenting the blockchain. Maybe you can. I'm not aware of being able to do that. That would be something you would copyright. You would copyright the work. But there again, I'm not an expert. This is my understanding.
so? Can I share a little background on the patents and what's
Sure,
going on?
please do.
I
Please
really
do.
want to know if you know about this or not. So please, first of all, have you studied the end chain patents?
I've only read them cursory. I haven't dived into them. No deep dive yet.
Okay, but are you aware of the
Oh
patent
yes,
life? You are aware.
yes.
Okay, so it's all right. So can Bitcoin be patented? Um, Seems like that Enchain and Dr. Wright are about 10 years ahead of everybody else right now in this game. So it's like the horse that is just way ahead. You know, I think we're over like 4,600 patents. I don't even know how many they've applied for. It's a huge, massive library, and the issued patents are something like I don't know if it's 500, 600. I'm not sure. Last time I checked, they're being issued quite a bit. But again, that has nothing to do with this upcoming case. Nothing. It's not even an issue, and that's kind of the confusing part. People think that the patents are because it's Crypto Open Patent Alliance. They're suing over patents. That has nothing to do with this case at all. So that's for a later date.
Yeah, I'll
And
have to do
whether
some more research on that. I'm not familiar with that, and to
and it
be
ultimately
honest,
what the patents are stating is that hey, we want to we allow any government or enterprise to use Bitcoin, um, meaning the original protocol. Okay, we allow anyone to use the protocol, um, but if you want to do it in a different way, you have to pay us a licensing fee for the how you're using smart contracts because a smart contract patent was issued years ago. The one that the ERC20 smart contract patent that Ethereum has. That's it seems to be pretty bulletproof. They've got it surrounded with multiple patents. So it seems to be that's a really going to be an interesting subject matter that'll come up in the future as to what Ethereum wants to do about that.
right.
Um,
Are you familiar with Tesla when he had the royalty, the Tesla Edison thing? We had royalty, and at one time he had like a percentage of every watt that was delivered in America. He actually owned that. He was going to be paid a percentage, but he decided not to accept it and he let it go. He died a pauper,
Tesla?
Tesla.
I didn't know that.
He's
Yeah.
been the richest man in the whole world. Could you imagine getting a percentage of every transaction? Oh, you're going to send a byte. There, you got to send me a like 10 satoshis or whatever.
You,
Uh,
you mentioned, go ahead. I mean, you mentioned the financial incentive to keep BTC as the dominant chain.
yeah, this is a theory I have, and I'm actually want somebody to debunk it. Um, it it's no question the SEC has ruled that BTC is a store of value. It's an asset, right? It's slower, 6 transactions per second, right? The percentage of hodlers, the people that buy this thing and don't move it, is huge. They just store it offline. It's there. It and couple that with the fact that transaction fees are going up, or they have been. I think they went down a couple days ago. But when we get to the point where the halvings produce so little Bitcoin for the miners, their only way to make money is through the transaction fees. Wouldn't that mean that the transaction fees are going to be huge? So if that's true, couple the high transaction fees with the propensity for the owners of Bitcoin not to move it. It to me, it's sort of like coalescing into this solid lump of coal, immovable object. It's just this electronic lump that serves no utility. It may be a store of value, but then that's just a matter of perception, isn't it? I'm just putting out ideas here. Whereas compared that to BSV, uh, Bitcoin Satoshi version, which has already been declared a security according to the SEC, and that's another issue. I don't understand. They both have the same Genesis block, and that was the reason for declaring one an asset and the other a security. BSV has utility. It's designed not to be a store of value, but it's designed to have utility and purpose. It's kind of interesting to me that you've got one designed that seems to be heading towards a solid rock lump of coal kind of situation, or you can call it gold if you want to, a lump of something that doesn't move, and this other thing that doesn't even care if it's stationary or not. It just wants to provide a service and utility. What's your comments on that?
Well, first I want to just address the idea of Bitcoin first. It must have utility before it can become anything. So we've got to look and see, well, what's the utility of this thing called BTC? What's its purpose and utility, other than an actual utility, not gold, not this gold stuff. That's just not a utility, So,
Right.
well, what is the utility? And I'm that question is yet to be solved for me. I'm not sure what the actual utility is going to be. Um, so that is a problem. And I would say I would definitely, make an objection here that there's been any determination about BSV by the SEC. That I would have a strong objection to, and they have yet to, from what I've read, BSV doesn't exist. Okay, pretty much. There's been no
Really?
determination. Well, I mean, the
Oh, you're
SEC's
talking
calling
about
it big.
the SEC really,
Yeah,
SEC
yeah.
really.
They call it Bitcoin. They just call it Bitcoin, but they have yet to determine that. From what I'm reading, they use the word Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Are they referring to BSV? Are they referring to BTC? Are they referring to what are they referring to? Yeah, so
Right, or
they're not
BCH.
using it. It seems like they're just not being they're being very general on these determinations. Now it's uh it's important to look at some of the, like, to look at what a security is, because there was that 1946 Howie case that by the SEC versus Howie. It talked about how there's four criterias for determining whether a security has been created. One would be an investment of money, a common enterprise with an expectation of profit, number three, and then derived from the efforts of others. So, have to kind of evaluate what's the security, what isn't. And we really, the only thing we can look to right now is that XRP ruling recently there, where they said that XRP tokens, since it wasn't issued to institutional buyers, if it was issued to institutional buyers, then it would be an unregistered security. But since it was issued just to common people all over the place, the court said that it wasn't a security. Now, some attorneys that I've read perspectives on saying that this ruling is not going to, it's not settled. It's definitely going to go back. But that's what Judge Torres found, that many people were just not intelligent enough to, they're not educated enough and intelligent enough, so that therefore those people, the XRP didn't have to be registered as a security. It was just out there in the open market. The common people were buying it, and that's fine. So that's the ruling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
but yeah, that's all we have to look for. Now here's the thing about I want to just make the case for what a digital commodity is, because this, I think, will be the new precedent for where it's going to go with Bitcoin. There has to be a common starting point with a digital commodity, a common starting point and a reasonable opportunity for anyone to start the network. So if you think about it, the white paper was issued in October 2008. And then after that, there was notice and opportunity for 90 days before the network started.
Yes.
All right. So that's the common starting point and a reasonable opportunity for anyone and everyone to start the network. Number two, there's neutral and organic growth without central point of influence. That again,
Yes.
the network was started mining blocks. It wasn't just like, if you look at any of these other offerings, for example, Ethereum or Ripple, these are pre-mined. So
Right.
all the whales, they accumulate and they pre-mine as much as they want. It wasn't like they didn't actually, they just got that stuff in advance. They started accumulating it. Now with these, you had to actually do proof of work on the network with the original Bitcoin offering. So it was a common enterprise with no central point of influence. Now, number three would be the economic competition resulting in a common entity and exit to compete with the network. So there had to be competition, proof of work. Proof of work is skin in the game. You're competing for every single block and block reward. Number four would be the common accountability of digital signatures. So there's got to be a way to track the transactions and creating a digital signature on each transaction. If there's no way to track the digital signatures, Ripple, BTC, then you're talking about it just is no longer a digital commodity. How do we track the transaction? Because think about it, when you buy gold, you're able to track it back to the mine. You buy a block of gold. Oh, this is mine. Here's this was at this mint. At least that's, you have a coin that's a gold coin. You can find out where it was minted at. You got to be able to track it back to actually prove the authenticity of it.
Mm-hmm.
Number five is the lock protocol. So no one can change it or control it. If you have to have a network, if we're looking long-term, that it must be locked, set in stone, never changed. No one can change it. No one can control it. Well, that's BTC. No, Ethereum, they've changed so much. XRP, I mean, these other networks are just bouncing all over the place. Number six, unbounded scale. This is like the big elephant in the room. Jack and Raphael did this amazing talk the other day about how, like, the moment that unbounded scale on a blockchain is solved, sky's the limit, because it's just a matter of time before people find out about it. And that's the keys. Unbounded scale, no limitations, no restrictions can be manufactured on the network, and the network can't be manipulated. And then the last part is the economically completed for extraction, a fixed token supply. Has to be fixed. Can't be changing. We're uncertain to how many tokens Ethereum can issue, can't issue. Have you ever noticed that? Question mark, right? We don't know.
And not to mention, he's even admitted there's a back door, if I understand it. I saw a video of him on Twitter, Vitalik, saying that you have to have a back door to get in case that I could have been deep fake. I don't know, but that's the video I saw.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've got to have a fixed supply. We've got to be able to, so it can't be inflated or deflated. There where no one controls it, no one owns it. I mean, these other networks that don't have that, they just, check box. It doesn't meet these elements. So these are just the elements to. Now, that's not just what I just decided there was not in a court yet, but I believe that'll be the elements that are required to meet a digital commodity in the future. And accordingly,
well, if that's the case, it sounds like you're describing BSV.
accordingly, there's nothing that compares. There isn't any other. Well, what other all these other projects that have been created are based on the premise that Bitcoin did not work. Would you agree? Bitcoin didn't work. It failed. It didn't work, which would be, it makes complete sense. Think about it. You get on Bitcoin for the first time, you're looking at BTC and you try to make a smart contract and you got the digital signatures have been sliced in half. You know, the whole network has
You're
been,
talking about post SegWit
yeah,
and all that. Yes,
right.
right.
It doesn't work properly. So therefore we've got to do something else with the network. And I mean, based upon that, that argument, it makes sense. However, because the Genesis upgrade, what was it, February 4th, 2020, the entire original protocol has been restored and it's got unbounded scale, transactions at less than a penny. It's only like $500 to onboard the entire planet onto BSV. Everybody could be onboarded for less than $500.
It makes total sense to me. So do you think that that is why he forked BCH so that he could get that Genesis block?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, whether or not even a fork occurred or a split. I mean, these are, I mean, the technical, it would have to, I'd have to defer to like Kurt or somebody regarding the technical aspect on it, because if it were me, I'm saying that it was a split, not a fork. A fork would be like a total change in protocol, but nothing ever changed with the BSV protocol from the original protocol.
Okay, we can call it a split, but if he would have started a new blockchain with a new Genesis block, then it would no longer be
Yeah,
Bitcoin. It would be
correct.
something different. So Satoshi had, or Dr. Wright, whoever is in charge here of doing this, would have to have that Genesis block to retain all the elements of the original protocol, which would include BCH and then BSV. And so in order to keep that blockchain pristine, to go back to the Genesis block, you've got to do a split. Otherwise, it would be a new blockchain. Doesn't that make
Yeah,
sense to you?
it seems to make sense. Like had to split away from BTC or have BTC split away. That way they're doing their own thing. And then that was the 2017 split and then
Do you
2018 split
know?
again.
Do you know? Let's just play hypotheticals here, and we're just wondering. None of this is fact. We're just hypothetical. Let's say Dr. Wright prevails in both suits. He is Satoshi. He wins the copyright lawsuit. Okay. BTC cannot use the Bitcoin name anymore. Nobody can use the Bitcoin name except for BSV. All right. Here's we are. We Let's say they are allowed to use the, this is all hypothetical, the Bitcoin chain, the original Bitcoin chain, but all splits, all SegWits, all the modifications, the Lightning Network, all the layer 2 stuff is no longer valid. What do you think would happen to all the financial energy that's been pumped into those things since? What would happen?
Hyper Bitcoinization. It would, here's the thing that's the big unknown that's confusing about what, not confusing, it's just this new technology. You've got what's called just SHA-256.
Yes.
So basically these SHA-256 miners, they have a switch on. As a miner, you can decide which chain you want to mine.
Correct. Correct.
And so this is like one of the elements that could cause this entire hyper Bitcoinization flipping, is because, you know, if it just becomes more profitable to mine one of the chains, let's say BSV, and these other chains are having all these problems with these legal issues, it's only a matter of time before the miners switch and they say, well, I'm mining on this other SHA-256 chain right now. It's not working. It's causing me problems. Switch. I'm going to make more money over here. For my business, it makes more sense for me to run my business. I'm going to make a profit. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here for politics or whatever other issues. I want to be legal. I want to be sound. I want to make a profit. Switch, boom. There's probably going to be a couple people that are in it for other reasons, but at the end of the day, these miners are looking at a profit on the network.
Yeah, they
And
got to pay their bills. They got a huge investment, and
yep.
that's a lot of electricity they're using for this.
Yeah, and it's really a simple change. So that's just another when the other networks are creating lots of problems and issues, there just becomes a point where the consciousness all of a sudden wakes up and says, "Psh." I mean, think about this happened recently. What was one of the examples where the consciousness of the public, the media news that gets out there so fast, where 200 million, 300 million, 400 million people find out about something. And all of a sudden an example was the Sam Bankman-Fried thing with FTX. Well, most people probably didn't know necessarily about, maybe they weren't involved. They didn't lose money from FTX, but people knew in the news, oh, FTX is bad. FTX was a scam, or they found out that people lost money in FTX. So they had that. It was like this consciousness change. From, remember, right before that, it was like, oh, FTX had all these great celebrities, Tom Brady and these great people. They were amazing. I had great friends. They were telling me all about it. It was the best thing ever.
Right.
All of a sudden, it just
It
changed.
sounds like you're talking about the 100th monkey.
100th monkey syndrome.
Yes, 100th monkey. Right.
In the 100th monkey syndrome, it's an amazing story, because if you think about, like, when you go back, they gave they had monkeys on different islands, right? Different locations during the study.
Right.
The way I remember the story
Right.
was like where monkeys started getting the banana on one island and eating it, and then somehow, because monkeys on the other island, they had some sort of a brainwave connection. It was like this telepathy connection, where enough of the monkeys, 100 monkeys on one island, started eating the banana. All of a sudden, monkeys on the other island started grabbing bananas and eating them too, even though before that they didn't know to eat the banana.
No,
That was how I remember the story. I actually did a video on that years and years ago. That's a fascinating, and ultimately that's where we're at. But this is a lot could happen a lot faster. That's what hyper Bitcoinization is the concept is that Daniel Kravitz wrote about. It really just switches overnight. It's not one of those it's going to take years and years and years. It may take years before it happens, but it'll be an overnight switch when it does happen.
right. I mean, did you notice how fast BTC went up yesterday on that hack from the SEC? It went up to like $2,000 in an hour or two. It was really quick. It
Wow.
was really quick, and as soon as they announced that it was a hack, then it dropped just as fast down. It's amazing that how news. But then play this scenario out a little bit further. If we get to the situation where people are, this is just a hypothetical, dumping BTC and trying to buy BSV, it's hard to buy BSV right now. I mean, to this day, I mean, right now.
As an American, it's hard to get it.
Yeah. So could you imagine then if everybody in the world's trying to switch over from BTC to BSV? That's going to be chaos.
It's
Could
not
be.
you're not gonna get it. It's just not. It's already. I've heard that there's only 5. I don't know. I mean, I heard there was only. I'm trying to think what the available market on BSV was. It wasn't the actual open market. Like, what's actually available is. I can't remember the number. I don't have it, but it's low. The supply is
It's
low.
low and it's hard to buy. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. That's been my experience. It's difficult to find and difficult to buy.
Difficult to find, difficult to buy, and yeah, Americans, we don't even. I have a problem. You can't get on these exchanges that even have it. You need KYC
Right.
and all these things. It's just not that easy. Yeah, it's definitely confusing. But what will happen is, so the supply and demand aspect of it. I mean, it's really one of those things. It's a unicorn, isn't it? A unicorn. I mean, if there's only what, 19. They say there's 19 plus million that have been mined. Of that, how much are gone and lost? Of how much are people that are never going to
You're
sell
talking
until
about BTC or BSV?
both.
Mhm.
Both of them. Whoever has the original BTC, the original Bitcoin would have all three chains. So it just seems like there's just a limited supply. There's a lot of theories out there. People talk about hyper Bitcoinization, where eventually it will absorb the entire money supply. And I
Well,
mean
that's assuming that the government doesn't come in and offer an alternative like CDBC or
and
or
that's an interesting question, because governments are always going to be very, very aware of patents. They're going to have an incredible research team making sure that they're compliant before they issue CBDCs. And that's a really the concept there of the CBDCs is almost encouraging, because when you start to realize that this end chain has cornered, they've done this absolute Pentagon corner on the entire market for blockchain technology.
Right.
While most people have no idea who they are, and they hire, let's say that the government of Poland hires a consultant to go out and research CBDCs on blockchain. Well, build us our own blockchain. Well, then they're going to realize that either they don't do enough research because they haven't read patent law, or they finally do the research and they realize all roads lead to end chain. Let's talk to these guys and see what we can do, because clearly they've cornered the market on this entire project. So what do we got to do? And then it's all of a sudden they're building on BSV. Why wouldn't they? I guess the question is other than political motives, why wouldn't they want to use BSV? Can you think of a reason?
Big money talks. I mean, we've seen that over and over in our history of the United States, is those with the biggest guns usually win. And there's a lot of big guns with COPA. I mean,
there is, however,
money.
The governments are bigger, and the governments meaning the courts. And so if you have the patents behind you, you have the full weight of the government behind you. If it's patent law is really strict and really tough. So while COPA may be big, the government's going to be bigger. That's why you have these court system to enforce these patents. So why wouldn't someone like a government want to use a CBDC if on BTC? On BSV, excuse me. It's a fraction of a cent. It's the cheapest network to do it on. It's the most secure. It's a stable protocol. I would love to hear the incentive to use something other than that. Why it's better.
Well, certainly the low transaction fees makes a lot of sense, and the unlimited size of blocks makes it's going to be a selling point for it. But on a corollary, a parallel thing, I watched a talk by Dr. Wright about what he sees Bitcoin BSV in the future, and that he says he wants to see everything on the blockchain. He wants
Bitcoin.
to see the internet thing. You want the Internet of Things on the blockchain. Everything, every transaction, everything you say, everything you write, everything you do, everything you buy. That's a little dystopian to me. It's just a little scary. There should be privacy, and I'm making a case against BSV right here, and that is the lack of anonymity. Even Dr. Wright even proclaims that every transaction can be traced. It's pseudonymous, but you can find out where it was initially initiated from. And just imagine, okay, I'm going down a really dark negative hole here, but just imagine when you're a young kid and you say something or do something stupid, and then 50 years later, you're still living with that stupid decision, and they'll never forget it. I mean, I hate to think of all the stupid things I did that I'm really glad there was no internet back then and no pictures of it or anything. But imagine everything being recorded. That's a huge negative for me. Money is one thing. Transactions, buying goods and service, they're essentially cash. But I'm not so sure the Internet of Things on a blockchain is a good idea for humanity. What's your thoughts about that?
We'll see whether it's a good idea. That wish I had a say in the matter. There's probably there's a lot of reasons it could be good, and probably a lot of reasons it could be bad. We have privacy, potentially privacy concerns. However, the benefit of it would be preserving our history, preserving records, knowing exactly what happened. I think there's a lot of questions in our history that are uncertain. Those who are usually the winners of wars, they get to write the history. What about the other side? Be nice to know some of these other sides of history. We don't have a record of that. There's a lot of dates. I wonder, was this this building in San Francisco, they've got this Palace of Fine Arts, this incredible Roman structure, which we forgot how to build nowadays. We don't know how to do it anymore, but supposedly it was built right before the Great Depression. And I'm just like, I wish I had better records. Is that really when it was built? And why can't we do it anymore? Just a lot of questions in history that are mysteries.
I get that, and I agree that that would be a positive thing. I just do think there's a place for privacy
Yeah,
and a place for archiving records. So, I mean, without,
could could have some constitutional implications for sure regarding privacy, which would have to be determined.
yeah, like what rights do you have as far as privacy? They seem to be stepping on those privacy rights right now with
More and more, huh?
KYC, don't they?
Yeah.
Since the Patriot Act, since the Patriot Act, it seems like privacy has gone out the window. Oh, we want to know everything you do. We want to, keep track of everything.
Well, I mean, that's a very deep subject right there. I want to
We don't have to
I
go
could
there at all.
yeah, let me ask you if I could. You mentioned that you worked with Dazed and Confused. Was that with Matthew McConaughey, or what was your involvement?
I recorded him doing overdub parts. They call it um, well, the term escapes me right now because it's been so many years. I did the temp mix for Dazed and Confused. I did not do the final mix, but I did record him doing overdub lines. He played the character of Vilmer, which was I don't know if you've seen the Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or not, but it was Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey and some. I mean, that was a long time ago. My my client list is kind of large with lots of different fields. So I just have to say again that all the things that we're talking about today have nothing to do with my clients. These are my personal opinions and have nothing to do with them at all. So it's very important for me to separate my opinions from my professional work.
And how did you first find out about Bitcoin?
Um, I had, well, I find most of my stuff on YouTube. So if I kind of like to go down rabbit holes on YouTube and I'll see somebody talking about Bitcoin and I'll start listening to it. And I just thought it was an interesting concept that I I've known about it for a while. Um, so I'm trying to remember whether or not it was YouTube or not. I could be wrong about that because I think I first heard about it in about 2013. 2013 was when I first heard about it. Was Bitcoin around $300 then? Seems like
Probably about
whenever it was
right.
around when BTC was around $300 is when I heard about it, and I was thinking to myself, man, I need to put some money together and buy at least one of these things and hold on to it. Never did, never did. You know how it is. You get involved with life. You're busy making money doing everything. I don't have $3 to waste on that, that kind of thing. But then I saw it go up to 19,000. I said, "Wow! If I would have just bought one of those things, at $300, and then it dropped back down to what 3,000 or something." So I said, "Well." And when it was at 19,000, I was trailing all my friends and said, "Wow, this thing is the greatest thing in the whole world. Look at this. Well, maybe we should buy some of this stuff." And then shortly thereafter, it dumped. I don't remember what caused it to dump, but it did dump. And I just I just like to learn things, Gavin. I'm retired, but I still do music. I have a weekly Thursday night live music show, 7 o'clock. It's on all the social media platforms, the Larry Seyer Show. And that's what I do for fun, and that's what keeps me busy. But whenever I'm not doing music, I study Bitcoin and I program. I study programming. I'm a C++ programmer. Um, I just like to learn. So that's what got me interested in Bitcoin. Is a new concept, the idea of digital money. It was intriguing to me.
Hmm. So have you gone down the rabbit hole about, so speaking of digital money and whatnot, have you gone down the ordinals rabbit hole and looking into the smart contract possibilities on BSV?
Only some. Of course, I'm more familiar with the smart contracts that were done on Ethereum and that kind of stuff. But I understand that given the unlimited block size, that ordinals on BSV would be fairly easy and cheap. Because as you both know, as we both know, that Ethereum gas fees were ridiculous at one time. I don't know if they still are or not. I don't deal in Ethereum. Kind of lost all interest in it. But I'm totally focused on BTC and BSV at this point. Nothing else.
So there's a there's a company called Scrypt, and they basically what they did was, the guy, this gentleman, he's a developer from originally from Facebook, and he was working with Ethereum at one point, and I don't know what working with, but working on Ethereum, and then he started going down this rabbit hole with Bitcoin. And then he somehow went out and met Dr. Wright in London, and sat with him, literally shadowed with him for a period, quite a bit of time, and learning about like the fundamentals of Bitcoin. And he had the developer programmer knowledge. And so he's like, yeah, Bitcoin's Turing complete. It needs, somebody needs to get the smart contract programming language developed on it. And so he took it upon himself to start a company and raise investment capital, and put that entire language together. And it's Scrypt is the company, and they basically, as of the last, it's been almost 2 years now, I think, that they have it to where you could literally just, as an Ethereum developer, I think it's one line of code, take something from Solidity on Ethereum smart contracts and then turn it into Bitcoin, and all of a sudden all those gas fees and everything just pretty much go away. And the
That would
same.
be a good idea. That would be a great idea. Now,
Yeah.
are you familiar with Minds.com?
No.
It's a social media site that I'm part of too. It's pretty cool. It's as I understand it, it was well, here, just check it out. I'm not going to say what it is. Just check
What's
it.
the benefit?
It's sort of like an uncensored social media site.
Oh, hey, uncensored is, we need more of that.
I totally agree. I mean, let the people decide what they want to read and what they don't want to read. Yeah. So, but that's getting into politics side, Gavin. That's a dangerous slope right there.
I mean, some of these concepts, eventually in the future, it'll be, even right now, there's platforms out there that where you pay a small transaction fee to post your content on the blockchain. That way, it's not it can't be censored because you own that piece of data. So,
I think it's a good concept, but then you have things like yesterday. There were Vivek Ramaswamy Swamy did an interview with some reporter, and apparently something was said that YouTube that went against YouTube's um, policies, and they took it down. They just basically killed it.
hmm. Well,
That that is censorship. I understand the rights of a company to protect their viewers and that the policies and what have you, but that's a fine line between censorship and enforcing policies.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting nuance. I mean, we got to be very mindful on what the terms and conditions are when you upload onto their company's platform,
Yep,
YouTube. So hey,
that's
and that's kind of the game we signed up for. So we got to play
true.
by those rules. That's my
That's
my
true.
opinion. I mean,
Are you familiar with Noster?
no.
Okay, it's a all right. Well, just NOSTR. Just do a little research on that. I'm not going to explain that. Just going to ask you about that. That's something for you to go down the rabbit hole on.
So back to the concept about your opinions on the tendency of like, I mean, of BTC versus BSV, and where we go from here.
Okay.
Um, what do you where do you see things where do you see things going? You've obviously looked into this extensively.
I think it all depends on this court case for me. I think if the SEC approves the ETF before the court ruling, we're going to see a huge spike in BTC temporarily. And if Dr. Wright prevails in the ruling, in my opinion, on both cases, then we're going to see a huge wave of people moving from BTC to BSV, in my opinion. That's what I see is going on. So right now, it seemed to me that it would make most sense to straddle the fence. Because if he loses, BSV could go to zero, or won't go to zero. It won't ever go to zero because it has utility and function. But BTC could be the dominant player, and that's where we head. Don't know. It's kind of hard to say right now.
It's going to be
What do you?
nice to, yeah, it's going to be nice to have some closure on the issue. I mean, we went through this ETF thing back in 2017 with the SEC before, and they went down this rabbit hole and they pumped it, and then nothing ever happened, and the market went down. So it's very likely that we're going through the same smoke and mirrors again right now, where it's great for all the institutional guys, and they're kind of on the inside with all their buddies, and they say, "Oh, ETF, let's get things going, let's make some money," and then there's something going on that we're not aware of. There's no ETF. We those are possibilities. Also, the possibility of the ETF is like they get to decide in their paper which chain. They explicitly stated that they get to determine what Bitcoin is, meaning like which chain is Bitcoin. They have that explicit
Oh, that
language.
is very interesting.
They
I
have that
had no idea.
explicit language in their ETF. They get to decide what Bitcoin is. I mean, it's not that BTC. They are very explicit that they will decide that, and I believe that it has to do with this court case because once the court determines this matter as a matter of law, then it will be naturally decided. They'll if they do have an ETF, it'll be on whichever chain potentially is the winner. It's very interesting. I like your point about BSV not going away. It has too much utility. So no matter what happens with the case, there's too much utility and too much value. Too many businesses already building on BSV. I don't see it ever going away. So that's one thing to mention. And BTC though, I think like you mentioned earlier, these articles, there's a lot of financial incentive to keep it as a dominant chain. They've got massive whales behind it. This Van Eck, Bitcoin's Promise, and these other ETFs, they're always going to be backing it to make sure that it's dominant. That's definitely, an interesting possibility. But I mean, BSV has similar backing. I mean, have you looked?
Well, I mean, my argument against that would be, well, why isn't the price reflecting that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, why doesn't the price reflect that?
Yeah,
Probably has to
BSV.
do. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Does it have to do with the fact that it's been taken off most exchanges? Is that why? Is it
That could
because?
be. That could be. Yeah. It's not on Coinbase. We know that.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
very fine.
it was interesting back in 2021 when they went on this massive it started with CZ of Binance. He made a tweet about how Craig Wright was a fraud. And then he pulled it off of the exchange. And then everybody jumped on the bandwagon behind it and they started pulling him off. Now it's really one of these interesting analogies because this guy's saying that Craig Wright was a fraud. Now he's been indicted.
Yeah, isn't that
CZ.
interesting? Yeah. And related to that, who do you think sent those 21 bitcoins to the Genesis block?
Well, that's I got a video I'm going to put out later on today about that. And basically it's fun, entertaining commentary we could discuss because if you look at the sanctions order by the court, they issued an order for Dr. Wright to pay some 1.1 million euros approximately in sanctions. Or, I'm sorry, not sanctions, in a deposit as like a
Right.
bond to the BTC
Right.
developers.
Huh?
That's a very similar amount to the BTC amount that was sent. It's like 27 Bitcoin was sent over to the Genesis block. That's similar amount in the euro, right around the same number in euros.
But wouldn't
So
the court decide where that money goes? Wouldn't the court decide to go into some kind of neutral third party instead of the
yeah,
block that's actually
yeah,
controlled by the
more likely
utility?
than not, the court's ordered, and I think it's already been done. I believe that his attorneys have already put in that money into the court fund or whatever trust that's holding those funds. So
And by the way, I'd like to make a comment about that. I mean, you do not pay $1 million up front for somebody's legal fees if you don't believe you are who you say you are.
Right. That's for
You
sure.
don't throw $1 million away just, but if you're a fraud and you're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, you don't throw away $1 million for that.
No,
I
know,
don't.
heck no, nobody does. No matter how rich you are, and that's the interesting nuance about this 1.1 million euros or 27 Bitcoin into the Genesis wallet. People are saying it was a mistake, it was an accident, and it's unknown. Craig seems to be
Well,
kind of
there's also the possibility, excuse me for interrupting, there's
yeah.
a delay, so I apologize for that. There's also the possibility that whoever sent that is trying to flush out the owner of the Genesis block because January 1st, 2024, the law went into effect that any transaction over $10,000 has to report to the IRS. Both parties have to report it. So if one party, and we don't know who that party sent it to the Genesis block, I mean, that's pretty expensive, $1 million. But by law, whoever owns that wallet or the Genesis block has to report that to the IRS, and they can't do that unless they reveal themselves, right? So I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, it might. I mean, the other theory, it could have definitely, there could be the IRS implications on who's actually behind it. And the other aspect is if Wright loses the case. Okay, this is just entertaining theory right here, having fun at the
Right.
end. Okay,
But that's
because
all we're doing.
this is
That's
all
all.
we're doing. But yeah,
Yeah.
ultimately, an entertaining theory could be like, well, Wright's hedging that he's going to lose the case. I mean, again, I'm just throwing this out there. He's going to say he's going to lose the case, and if he
Right.
loses the case, then he's going to pay that 1.1 million. He's going to be
Right.
forced from the Genesis block, and he'll sign as Satoshi, to pay the BTC developers. So let's say that he's ordered to pay the 1.1 million, and he says, okay, fine, I'm going to pay the 1.1 million. I lose. Here you go, guys. Where do you want me to send it? I'll go ahead and sign this Genesis wallet right now and send it. Because be mindful, that's the same block that he signed for Gavin Andreessen and John Matonis. So he's not in court, but he's signed those Genesis. He's signed out of that Genesis wallet before 6 times, I think in total he's signed already with that Genesis block. So it's not just like, oh, he doesn't have. There's lots of testimony that he's already done that. So this is another kind of a nuance that he could say, yeah, I'll pay you the 1 million, and then the developers have to take the million as he's signing as Satoshi. Kind of a
That would be
them
that would be an
like
ironic twist of
an
fate.
ironic twist of events. So he's sure. Here's the 27 BTC from the Genesis block. I mean, is that really what the BTC developers want? Would they even want to take that? Because if they take that, they're admitting that he's Satoshi.
That's well, either that or they have no ethics or morals.
That's right.
Who knows?
So Larry, any final comments or subjects to bring up that what are you up to, and where what do you think? Anything
I'm
else?
just going to continue to study this thing. This is very interesting for me. I love reading about this and educating myself. Thank you for the information that I learned from you today. I'm going to be doing some more research on in-chain and S-script and just educate myself as much as possible. I do think that if I was a betting man, if I was going to be investing in crypto, and I'm not saying that I am or I'm not, but if I was, I would straddle the fence. At this point in time, there is no way I would pick one over the other. There's too many variables. Um,
There, yeah, it's a good point. It's smart to be, well, first of all, it would be stupid to be all in on anything. I think that would be suicide. If,
Absolutely.
if you're not, if somebody's an investor, do not do that, please. I always just recommend everybody should have at least one Bitcoin SV, just one. Don't put your life savings. Please do not do that. I mean, we don't, these
What is
are,
it, $100 now or something? I mean,
yeah,
even for
just have
the
one, because in the future, the way I'm seeing this coming from a future perspective, we're going to be transacting in Satoshis. We'll have sound money, something that's operating on chain, trackable by any, digitally. We can use gold and silver, but we can also operate in Satoshis. One Satoshi, there's 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin.
Right. All right.
So everybody has one. We have lots of, future money to transact. So here's one Satoshi. Here's 10 Satoshis, and we can all transact. I'll be happy to take my payment in Satoshis personally.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd rather have payments in Satoshis than anything else. So
I'm absolutely for a sound money. I mean, we can't keep printing money forever, can we? I mean, the consequences of printing money out of thin air are is deflating the money supply, right? So, I mean, we've got to fix that leak.
I mean, that's an interesting subject. I mean, there's the potential bond default that's looming. We've got this massive giant bond bubble that could be looming. I mean, there's the hyperinflationary impacts that are happening in the United States and all over the world. These are just really concepts I had talked with Daniel Kravitz and the economics people about that. They can't really it's all speculation. They can just give like their own personal perspective. We don't really know, but we do. Can we agree that in all fiat monies in the past have at some point gone away? All fiat monies, they don't have a permanent life cycle.
All fiat currencies have failed.
So
the current one, and it's on its way. It appears to be on its way to failing.
Yeah. Well, but in the past, they've always failed. They always have a life cycle. They don't just always last. Like gold and silver have never failed. So we know that those are sound, and now we're looking for other sound, permanent stores of value.
Have you read the Bitcoin Standard? The book?
Bitcoin by who?
Stefan Amadeus, is that his name? I'll look it up here real quick. The Bitcoin Standard.
That sounds like a good book to read.
It is. The Bitcoin Standard by Stefan Amos. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. It's a really good book. They got audiobook and paper and Kindle. I highly recommend it. It goes into what is money, what is fiat. I thought an interesting thing it pointed out was beads used to be money on islands. It used to transaction in beads because they were scarce on islands. And then some explorer from Europe landed on the island, and they figured out the natives were trading in beans, so they went back and they brought over several cases of beads and basically deflated the money. I mean, they just bought everything. They bought the whole island with the money they just made out of thin air. It was a nice analogy, it was a good analogy comparing what's going on with fiat currency and how Bitcoin solves that. Whether or not we use BTC or BSV or BCH, whatever it is, the 21 million fixed supply is an extremely important thing for money, in my opinion. And the book does a really good job explaining it. It also explains how Bitcoin works. It's worth your time.
Oh, any more education we can have on that, the better. There's very limited resources on that. So
right.
We need more. I'll take a look and read that book. Absolutely. Have you ever come across Jack Pitts?
No. How do you spell that last name?
Pitts. Jack John Pitts. He's got a really interesting story. He was a stockbroker, New York
Blackstone?
City. Pardon?
Is he the Blackstone guy? Or is it
no, not Blackstone. He's retired now, but John Pitts, Jack Pitts, search Slictionary or BSV or Bitcoin. He's very involved in Bitcoin now. Anyways, he was a stockbroker. You can find him on YouTube. He's made some interviews on YouTube for sure.
Okay.
And he was a stockbroker back in the day with when eBay and Amazon first. I think even when I don't know, it was eBay or one of the early IPOs. What was the story? One of these early companies, I think it was eBay or Amazon. And so he would recommend these different picks to his clients and evaluating all these things, before he would recommend the stock, And so he shares just some incredible background and story about his perspective of evaluating stocks, for his client, it was a hedge fund in New York City, I believe it was. And then how he compares that to what he's discovered with Bitcoin, and how it all plays out. Now he's a generational long-term thinker. Again, this is not something that he's like, oh, tomorrow the price is going to go up or down. He's not a
Yeah,
trader
right.
now. Obviously he's not doing that now, but in a long-term thinking perspective, he does some very fascinating analysis from a financial perspective on Bitcoin. And when I mean Bitcoin, I mean the individual protocol, Bitcoin SV. So it really, how it applies to the original, all these original IPOs. Yeah, he does. He's a great storyteller. I'll have to get him on and do an interview with him sometime. I met him
Yeah.
personally in Dubai and London. I've had a number of calls with him. He's just a really fun guy to listen to. Very,
Is that
very.
I01 Ventures? I think I may have found him on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know about that. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me
It's
go to
I
YouTube.
501 Ventures, Investment VC, BSV, Startups, Early Seed Capital, Mentor, Technology, Internet, Bitcoin,
Sounds
Satoshi,
sounds
Vision.
like him.
I'm going to
Um,
follow.
here's a a video on YouTube. It's talking about uh his company now is called Slictionary, Slictionary, and that's a online dictionary built on Bitcoin.
Okay.
So very interesting. He's got some stuff. It's like former hedge fund manager discusses Bitcoin, episode 117 on YouTube. He's got dedicating the next 20 years to Bitcoin SV on YouTube, Jack Pitts. Yeah, anyways,
Mhm.
a very, very diamonds in the rough is something he did on YouTube, an interview. Very cool storyteller though. One of the most interesting.
Do some research on him. And speaking of research, I found this tool that may be helpful for you. Um, have you ever heard of citizenportal.ai?
No.
It's a startup. And what they do is they record and convert speech to text using AI and whatever technology they do, all the local businesses. So if you like, I use it for looking about what news Bitcoin is in my local community. So if I just type in, if I go to their portal, citizenportal.ai, and I type Bitcoin, I can find out locally here where I live anything that's talked about Bitcoin or what rules they're talking about. It's really interesting to stay on top, and it's not limited to Bitcoin. It could be anything you're interested in politics or rulings, local and state and national government is what it tailors to, and it's free right now. So it's a good tool. Um, I'm always looking for research tools.
Citizen Portal AI.
Uh, yeah, citizenportal.ai.
Cool. I'll check it
There's
out.
no S on that. Yeah, citizen portal, not plural.
Nice.
It's singular.ai.
That's beautiful. So, fascinating subject, Larry. Well, this is great. I greatly appreciate meeting you. Let's do this again sometime. It would be awesome to
Sure,
hear,
I'd love to.
follow up
I'm
again.
just going
And
to continue doing my weekly entertainment live music show every Thursday night at 7 o'clock.
how can people
5
find you?
They can LarrySeyer.com, LarrySeyer.com. That's the easiest place. But I'm on all the social media sites for my show. The Larry Seyer Show, 7 o'clock Thursday night Central Time. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch. It's Rumble. It's everywhere. So it's everywhere. He's everywhere.
Nice. Thank you, Larry. I'm going to end the recording right there. So we'll see you at the
Sounds
top.
good. All right. I'm going to turn off my stream too.